Good morning, friends. Boom Boom here from Boom Boom VVV. One V for vibe, one V for vision, and one V for voice, which will be the sort of theme of my upcoming new platform to be launched later this month. But as I was, gathering my thoughts this morning and finishing up my coffee, by the way, have you seen the price of coffee recently at Starbucks? Well, not so much the cost, but the venti is now a grande, pretty much is the way I see it. The grande's been decreased, all of them by about 20%, I would say. This new CEO has come in. His name is Nichols something or other. Should be called Dollar. Should be his name because that's all he's doing is taking dollars. But anyway, off the point. Back to the point. So I got provoked this morning listening to the news of some recent events, and I had to some extent put them aside, but then I got somewhat inspired, so I had to speak to certain matters as the pace of their unraveling, if you will, is quickening. And I don't know the moment. I'm not a Baptist preacher, by the way, nor do I know the exact time, but what I do know with certainty is that we're at significant, some might say, I've heard them say, grave peril here and now in the markets. There's this debate as to whether or not we're in a bubble. Now, I do have a deep concern that we likely are. I don't say that we are with confirmation because I don't have the hubris to go there. However, what I can say with a great deal of data, which I'm not going to present here, this is more or less just a prelude, if you will, a preview, a teaser of what to expect in this regard in the coming weeks. But they're like I said, they're unraveling at such a pace that I needed to at least offer an opening salvo as to what's unfolding here. But like I said, I don't call it a bubble primarily because, or at least not now, because it's an ambiguous, amorphous sort of term. And I just believe that one should use it very carefully. It's really a term that's applied in retrospect. It's very difficult and I think irresponsible to apply prospectively. However, like I said, there are tremendous parallels between what we're going through now, what we can factually measure, discern, see here and now, as it compares with previous moments like this. But we're certainly now at an inflection point, and I guess that's the most important thing to note, where these forces, are coming up against one another. On the one side, you have momentum, very powerful force, especially when it's the momentum of greed versus rational, historical sort of measures, tools of normality. But as most of you do know by now, there's very minimal amounts of normality in any area of our current human experience. So historically, there's this, there's this statement that history doesn't so much repeat as much as it rhymes. Well, right now we're rhyming with a host of very perilous moments in the markets, as well as in history, politically speaking. But this is not about politics, and rarely will I speak about politics. Well, I will have those moments. It is my background, very extensive. and I've studied it from pretty much all dynamics, including astrological and psychological, but mostly fundamental and technical. And here now, all four, if you will, have come to a sort of profound climactic point where resolution is at hand in the very near term. Don't know that it's right now. Don't know that it's this week, but it's very, very soon. And so I wanted to offer some alert to what is unfolding here. And so as I was thinking about this, I for a moment recalled, because I think we're to some extent going mad, losing our minds, spinning out of control, lost in space. And so when I reflected on Lost in Space, I went back to the series Lost in Space, which was a series that was, mid-60s, I guess it was. For those of you who don't know, it was about the time of Batman, but preceded Star Trek. It was the first sci-fi series on television years ago. And so it was the story of this family, the Smith family, I believe it was, traveling through space, right? And they would land on these planets and encounter, beings. And there was always some sort of moment of grave risk. And this one character called a robot, we were learning about robots at this time, or first being introduced to robots in society. He was called, interestingly enough, B9, I think it was. And so whenever they came into the series would always, or the episode would always climax at the point where he would recognize a danger and alert the others. And so that moment would come with his warning of danger, danger, danger. So call this a danger, danger, danger warning for me. So we're seeing this level of divergence, dichotomy, delusion on all these fronts. A couple of quick ones for you. In the financial arena, there are two large pools of money. One is the central banks, and the other is institutional monies. Well, here and now, the central banks are operating in a seismic way to seek safety, harbors of hard assets accumulation, diversifying their portfolio, mostly away from, or largely, I should say, away from the dollar. They're pursuing mostly now gold and hard commodities, a traditional measure of safety, tried and tested. The institutional arena, on the other hand, is buying the hype, and they're getting rich. They're getting full of themselves. Their excitement, their enthusiasm, their pursuit of the world of the JetSons, while others are experiencing the world of the Thunderdome dichotomy. So within the markets, we're witnessing the same sort of divergence. On the one hand, you have these high-flying tech stocks, and guys, I use guys, non-gender. These tech stocks, they've exploded phenomenally. And the pace, the rise, incredible sorts of increases in the price of these stocks over the last, especially over the last, I would say, 2 months now, where we've seen companies with not even legitimate business prospects. I don't say that. They'll say that. They'll say, we don't even have sales projected until 3 years out, and let alone when we'll have profits. And yet they've increased in value by hundreds of billions, truly, okay? And this is across a whole spectrum of investment sectors, while more traditional investment areas, arenas, sectors can't find a bid. They just keep falling. Insurance stocks, consumer staples, health sectors. And so what's happening is the enthusiasm in this one sector is just sucking money from the others. It's an overall implosion within the market. But it's now reached a point, a very notable and crisis point, where it's beginning to eat on its own. And that's why I've chosen to address and speak to it here and now, because it tells me that the end of the mania, the bursting of the bubble, the snapping, is very near. Again, not saying it's today, not saying it's tomorrow. It's very near. Think of it like, what's that movie? It was the Dirty Dozens, right? Where towards the end, they're going to blow up the building, and they light the fuse, and it's running into the explosive whatever they have there. And Jim Brown, after he lights the fuse, he's running. We're in that sort of moment where the fuse has been lit. And again, all of these divergences, and the dichotomy and the clear delusion is at a point in time of signaling that the one should be. So with the light being lit, one needs to be very aware, very alert here and now, because resolution is coming near term, and the resolution will be painful, and that's particularly noteworthy in a time where our traditional tools to manage are in a state of disarray, dissolution, crisis. Governments closed, no working relationship with international institutions, brokenness, generally speaking, which is only going to prolong and make all matters that much more difficult to resolve. So the polarization of these events, and we can see that within our, society. Like, we have increasing number of billionaires, trillionaires now, versus rising number of people in Section 8 and homelessness, brokenness. While one constituency is saying, let them eat cake, the other is saying, no kings. And so these things cannot exist side by side for an endless period. And I'm suggesting that resolution is here and now. But we're not talking about just, stretch valuations, if you will. There are other technical tools, technical measures, which rarely come together, or only come together at a point such as this. I don't want to get too esoteric, but I can cite, there are cyclical and structural patterns, be it Monteith, be it Elliott Wave, be it Heidenberg. These are tools which rarely, they do come together at moments only like this, and they're coming into an alignment now. an alignment that signals a dooming circumstance near term. But it's not just there. We can see it, for example, in over the last year and couple of months now, the Fed has made an attempt to lower rates on 2 occasions, most recently this past September. And on each occasion, market rates rose. That's clear evidence of an impotence with respect to the Fed. In economic terms, we refer to it as pushing on a string. It basically renders them somewhat impotent and not up to the task of being the lender of last resort. So there's that. Again, I've mentioned the central banks. I've mentioned the distortion, intermarket sectors, intra-market sectors. And so here we are. And so now, one of the things I've learned about markets is how it relates to how they relate. Again, markets for me are a lens into events of the day. A very good one, I do believe. I'm sure you've heard follow the money. Well, in following the money, much is revealed, oftentimes hidden from the general society, the general public. And as I follow the money here, as to some extent I've addressed, there's also patterns in our social ways. Here I want to bring to your attention this event which really provoked me that took place down in Mar-a-Lago this weekend, this Gatsby party. Well, preceding the Great Depression of 1929 was this Gatsby era. An era which one would best describe as a period of soullessness, right? Soullessness, opulence, greed, versus really, really difficult and challenging times for most people. Ultimately, a period there too where high tariffs were a problem, Fed principles, under stress. And so it all ultimately climaxed, or crescendoed, I should say, into the Great Depression. I should also mention the rising white supremacy that was also characteristic of that period. So we see these things coming together again. History doesn't necessarily so much repeat as it clearly rhymes. And this is a moment where the tune that we're playing out here, has a long history, a long chord of peril. I can hear Pink Floyd Money kind of like whispering in the background. The champagne always pours before the crash, I guess is how I would sum that up. The music crescendos before the silence. And we see that, it's not just all data. This is art. I'm not sure if art imitates life or if life imitates art. But no matter how you look at it, it's intriguing, fascinating, and like I said, it has a rhythm and tune to it, all here and now. I mentioned earlier how you have the bubble folk, right? the narrative dispense the JetSon's dream versus the anchoring down by the central banks. No matter how you look at it, and no matter which side wins, we're ultimately going to sink from either victor. There will not be a victor here. There will only be a hard descent back to normality, mean reversion, if you will, back to systems that are manageable and work for a broader constituency of society. It can really fall no other way. The process is just not going to be pleasant. And so, no matter how you measure it all, we're out of bounds. I often think of, a rocket taking off into space, getting back to that space metaphor. And, while it rises in sort of a hyperbolic way, it falls in a fiery blaze of glory before it finally crashes down. I want to address one particular sector that's just been explosive of last several weeks now. It's the memory sector, the storage sector, the sector that makes chips for holding and storing all the data that we're going to be needing for the data centers and artificial intelligence explosion. Just on fire to an extreme extent over the last several weeks. I believe the numbers are now something like $1.3 trillion that has flowed into this sector just over the last couple of weeks. Again, at the expense of other sectors. But like I said earlier, only so much can be sucked from the corpse of dead bodies before you have to start turning on your own, which is where I see us now, where we now find ourselves. We've sucked the blood from the other sectors to such an extent that there is no more blood left, and so now we have to eat our young. That's what's happening in the markets. And so we see how, the rubber band is just stretched too thin. The rubber band is just stretched too wide, I should say. I'm sorry about that. So we see the rubber band being stretched too wide. It's going to snap. And I know that all of you have played at some point in time with stretching a rubber band too far and it snaps on you. Well, we're seeing a similar sort of dynamic play out or to play out soon in the markets. And you don't want to really be around what we used to call holding Herman during that snap. So essentially, I'm suggesting that we've exhausted our momentum. The mania now has to, after now searching for fuel here, there, everywhere, doesn't really have anywhere else to turn. And the implosion will quicken and deepen in the here and now. I see this, think of a volcano that, erupts. And we're in that stage of eruption, which interestingly, and this gets to a broader theme of mine, how, we're going through a broad cosmic period. And I don't want to get too heavy here with that, because I'll speak about that more in some of my later content or messages. But it is part, from my perspective, of a death of old ways, the end of Pisces, to the birth of Aquarius. I believe it's all that we're going through is part of that transition. And so with all birth comes a breaking, a destructive force, a cry. Now, while all this is going on, in many areas we just see the party continuing. So there's enough for a prelude. I can hear the drum roll, and I know that in markets it's, they don't just rise and fall, they tell a story, or they're part of a story. And sometimes that tale is, or quite often that tale can be one of Alfred Hitchcock. And I think that's what's beginning to unfold and unravel. And I wanted to bring it to your attention. Again, I don't want to suggest right here, right now. I do want to suggest that it's only prudent that you be prudent when everyone else is imprudent. You never really want to be part of the crowd, if you will. Great stories about being part of the crowd. I would only say that if you're going to be part of a crowd here and now, that you carry some Diddy oil, you know what I mean? Because, that's pretty much what's about to happen. Yeah. And so we built things up too much to the point of tension to where the resolution is about to happen. And I offer danger, danger, danger. So buckle up, observe everything, trust nothing. Yeah. And I guess lastly, remember that when art and science speak in unison, we'd be wise to listen. So all the signs are there. Only thing that remains is the Big Bang. So let me again remind you that I'll be launching my site later this month. I will be seeking your support, your subscriptions, your clicks, all that sort of thing, which we're learning how to format and put into the platform. A lot of work, a lot of effort that goes into it all. At least for me, I'm not familiar with audio and visual and that sort of thing. That's not my expertise, but I'm learning, and I'll get down the road. But I'm scheduling my launch for day after Thanksgiving, and invite you, welcome you, and hope that you'll be part of this new journey that I'm undertaking. So with that, let me say namaste, and let me give a shout out to my new granddaughter, JetSon. It all comes together. Thank you. Have a great day.